Welcome to Real Estate Investing for Professional Men and Women, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Hi, everyone. This is Gary Wilson, and welcome to this version of Real Estate Investing for Professional Men and Women. And just like it says, if you're on, it's probably because you're, a chiropractor, dentist, engineer, pilot, military, teacher, list goes on. But often you own a business, okay? And this is really important because we often, when we own a business, you recognize that you're kind of like, you are the business and you're on duty quite a bit, okay? So for those of us who do invest, or most of you do want to invest if you're not already investing, we operate honorably and ethically in our areas where we're not into the cheap, crappy stuff. We buy great, good properties and make them available to tenants who deserve a good home. So everybody wins. We win, we profit, the community wins, the tenants win. And if you want to be part of that community, you can do that. You can go to myinvestmentservices.com, click on members area, and you can see there's two different levels you can sign up with. And initially, they give it to you for free anyways, but just get in as much as you want to in the beginning, and then you can go further from there. But join the community, because I tell you what, guys, not just all of us professionals are on there who invest, but we've got over 3,000 real estate agents that we've trained personally to work with us. This is a big deal because I know in the beginning, most agents weren't really well prepared to help me invest. So I got my license, and we now have a training program where we teach them, and we all benefit from this. So that's part of the community. Also, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. It's on Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, 75 different channels. And if you like what you're seeing and hearing, just go ahead and join up. So, in any case, today's subject somewhat unique. From time to time, you recognize that we're not all just only about real estate. We really do care about our businesses, our practices, and our jobs, and our families, of course. So from time to time, I'll have somebody on who's got something unique that I think will really benefit you. And then today is one of those days. So Jim Sheils is in a mastermind group that we're in together called Go Abundance. There's a group for men, a group for women. The tagline is healthy, wealthy, generous men who seek to lead epic lives, in our case, because we're men. And we're kind of serious about that. And I can tell you, most guys are really good. They're good dads, good husbands, good brothers and sons, and good friends and good neighbors to have. So Jim's one of those guys, and Jim has a unique formula that I wanted to share with you because I think it's going to really help you, not just in your business life, but really more importantly in your personal life. So first off, hey Jim, I just want to say thanks for joining us, man, today. I know you're a busy guy and you're taking your precious time to do this, and I really appreciate you doing this. So welcome aboard.
Thanks, Gary. Glad to be here.
Excellent. Hey, if you wouldn't mind, some people may be familiar with you, which is great. But for those who don't, would you mind just kind of giving us a background, like who is Jim for those listening? Because then it'll give us some context so that when we talk going further, it'll make a lot more sense,
Sure. I've been a full-time entrepreneur for 21 years. Real estate investments has always been my core business. I've had a real estate investment company for 20 years. And about 7 years ago, I started to run workshops and retreats for entrepreneur and professional families because I could see that there was a disconnect between people being successful at work and being successful at home. And I started to share some basic themes that I have been taught over the years because I really wanted to have a strong family life. And so what I do is I help not only with my continuing real estate investments, but I help other families set what I call rhythms into their family life so that they make sure they're not losing, again, that success at home for success in the business.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been my quest for the last 7 years, running these two businesses. I continue to grow my real estate portfolio as well. But now I'm speaking on stages all over the world and doing workshops all over the world, and did release a book 5 years ago that went to #1 in parenting, business and finance, and entrepreneurship called The Family Board Game. And it's all about treating our spouse and our children as our most important investors and clients.
Mm-hmm.
And I go into a simple strategy in that book that I'm sure we're going to talk about today.
Okay. Well, I hope that we do. And by the way, we can certainly talk about real estate investing also, but I think this is such an important subject. And I just, my 3 children, 2 are well into the second half of their 20s, off on their own, buying houses, being married, all that kind of stuff. They're doing great, and the younger one's still under the wings, so to speak. And I'm 16 years old. So I, looking back, I'm so grateful I did stuff with my kids when they were little, because they remember that stuff. And I was often the only dad, like going to school on the days when the parents would come in and help with the parties and things like that. So if you wouldn't mind, within that context of your background, you've been an entrepreneur for a lot of years. You invested in real estate too. What would you say, was there a trigger moment for you that led you to create this process? If you don't mind sharing, it may be deeply personal. If you want to kind of summarize it, that's great. But I think it would really help people understand where you're coming from and see, that maybe they can see a little bit of you and themselves, and hopefully, take your system and apply it to their own families,
Yeah. Well, it was about a decade ago. I had a number of things happening to me all at once that kind of pushed me in this direction. And, first off, we're talking a decade ago. I made it through the 2008 meltdown. I was heavily invested in California and Florida, where a lot of people in my position folded up and closed shop. I powered through, protected my investors. It was not easy, but we did it. And by keeping our feet and getting onto the other side of '08 with deals coming in '09, '10, it was a great time. But the business, I was bringing back a big business. I had just, this is when I met my wife, and I have 4 children now, 2 adopted, 2 biological. My wife was divorced with full custody of 2 young boys. So they came into my life, which was a huge unexpected blessing. And I was wanting to be better connected with them. It was a huge honor for them to ask me to adopt them. And it was at the same time as adopting them, I was actually in the beginning process of donating a kidney to my father. And that was something that was unexpected. So, with bringing back a real estate investment business from the dead, all of a sudden having this instant family and adopting 2 sons and going through the process to donate a kidney to my dad, I just got put into a position where family just took on a whole new focus. You get to that point of critical. I just had a different level of curiosity and commitment towards family. And so when I went through these searches, I started to find things that were helping me with my newly adopted sons and rekindle the relationship with my own father through this major surgery. And I started to share them with people at real estate groups like this. And it was very uncomfortable. I thought maybe it was silly. This isn't a strategy that's going to add to the bottom line. And people would just say, thank you. I needed to hear that. I've been succeeding on the balance sheet here, but not here. And a mentor of mine said to me something that you just hit on, Gary. You have 18 summers. He said, Jim, they're still your kids after 18 summers. But if you don't make the most of those first 18 summers, they're probably not going to want to hang out with you. And I'm just telling you, it's different. He had 3 daughters, very successful guy. And he said, they're still my daughters and I love them, but it's different. Make the most of those first 18 summers. Really take hold of them. And when I did that math, I thought, holy cow. I said, I adopted my sons at 7 and 5. I only had 11 left with the oldest one. I said, that doesn't sound like a lot. So it really put a new priority in focus, because I think it's important, Gary, to build our businesses. But there's these myths that people say, look, I want you to go all in for the next 5 years and your family will understand. That's terrible advice. That's absolutely horrible advice. I'm not saying not to work hard. I'm not saying not to sacrifice, but you need to make time and set rhythms now to enjoy them along the way. Because your family and relationships will not wait 5 years, 10 years. And I see a lot of people do that, and they come back and say, well, they'll understand. I did it for them. It doesn't work that way. It's an empty promise, and it rarely ends well. So I got put to that point of critical. And I created, again, the most popular one. We have a lot of different rhythms that we've set: family meeting, date night with a question with my wife and I, which is actually tonight. And then this quarterly board meeting strategy with each of my children. And that's the one that got us popular, because a lot of busy professionals and entrepreneurs they wanted the best, but they felt like they were living on the surface with their kids. They weren't connected. Time was going too quick. So this little strategy that I started to do with my sons, they started with quality time coupons at Christmas time, was this simple quarterly strategy that I still have done for almost a decade now. And now thousands of people are using it. And they're saying this one technique has been one of the most important grounding mechanisms in the relationship with their kids.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty good stuff, and I appreciate you sharing it. I know, I think I mentioned earlier, when I was a kid, I didn't actually mention this, I'm sorry. My dad was in Korea for a year, in Vietnam for a year. And so there were literally entire chunks of my childhood where he wasn't around. And we're great now. I mean, he's 82, going on 83. I'm 56, and we're just like blood brothers. But and you can't get the time back, and that's the key here. Is, going forward, this is what I've learned, and hopefully everybody resonates with this. In the early days, I was really into building the empire, right? Building as much massive wealth as I could, wealth and income. And I learned over time that really didn't buy me happiness. What bought me happiness was the time I spent with my kids. So now they're essentially adults, and I've gone from trading time for money to trading money for time. So now I measure my success in terms of my relationships, my experiences, and time I have to do those things. And my wish and prayer for everybody is that they can evolve and do the same thing and grow that way. And I just see your process as absolutely paramount in being able to do that and do that now. And not, like you said, don't mortgage time with your kids, because you can't get it back, So, hey, you mentioned a couple key things there, like coupons, Christmas, date nights with your wife. If you wouldn't mind, would you mind sharing maybe something, a couple techniques or strategies with your kids? And then what I'm getting at is, it's like different ages, of course, they have different needs and wants, and the relationship evolves. So I don't know if you've noticed that, like with my kids, obviously they're still my kids and I love them, but they've grown into adults. So obviously I don't treat them the way I treated them when they were 5 years old. But what have you found there, and any particular strategies you can think of? Hey, when they're 5 to 10 years old, this works great. When they're pre-teens, this works great. I don't know if I'm going up the right tree, barking up the right tree.
Yeah, no, this is great, and I think we're going to be able to segue into both. So
Good.
The strategy that I'm going to talk about, there's a slight variation for it if your kids are over the age of 18 or if they're under the age of 18. Mm-hmm. So this will work from 2 to 18, and then once they leave the house, it'll work as well. But you change the formula just a little bit. Let me explain.
Okay.
What I decided years ago was I think like an entrepreneur, Gary, why fight it? So I see my children, my spouse and my children as by far my most important investors and clients. Mm-hmm. And when I that might sound unhealthy to some, but for me, they were just heads above. Would I ever cancel just an appointment with my most important clients or my key team members? Or no, like I'm going to set time. I'm going to prioritize time. I'm going to put that on the schedule. I'm going to really carve out, on top of other work things. Hey, those clients are important, but these are the most important. So what I started to do was, a lot of companies do quarterly board meetings, right? And a quarterly board meeting with most companies means what it's made to do is reunite the team and bring you forward to the next 90 days. That's basically what a quarterly board meeting does for more entrepreneurial organizations. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do that with each one of my kids. Every quarter, I'm going to have a board meeting with them. And it started with these quality time coupons. When I was busy, I was bringing back the real estate company and the first Christmas together. Again, my adopted sons, who are now 16 and 14. I said, this day evolved into just 3 guiding principles. We'd spend at least 4 hours uninterrupted together. First is one-on-one. The second was without electronics. And the third was fun activity of their choice with focused reflection. And I can explain each one of those. So the first one, I tell people this, and let me tell you the variation now. If you have kids over the age of 18, they live away, they're running their own families, I get it. Not once a quarter, once a year. Once a year, you put this strategy to work. It is a game changer, an absolute game changer. And I can give an example of a friend of mine that had 7 children, ranging from age 8 to, there was a big range, 26, I think. And he had started to say, hey, I couldn't do it with my older kids every quarter, but I started once a year. He gave me the idea. But you put this strategy to work for 18 or over once a year, and then once a quarter for the younger years, you're going to see results. So let me explain how it works. First, one-on-one. If there is, I don't like the word hack, Gary, because I just don't think this is a hack. This is just such a powerful relationship building principle, and that's one-on-one. Mm-hmm. The most successful sports teams divide up pitchers from the catchers, from the infield to the outfield. Then they come back together and they play better as a team. Same thing here. One-on-one time, if people hear nothing else, get consistent one-on-one time with each of the members of your family. That you got to separate the parts to strengthen the whole. This is such an overlooked thing in the busyness of the everyday. You know, that's for your spouse and your children. So when I have this, quote unquote, I call it a board meeting, an important meeting with my son or daughter. And it doesn't matter if you call it daddy, daughter, father, Sunday. I call it a board meeting. It's an important meeting. Also, I'm a surfer. So a board meeting has a double play on words.
Yeah.
But with this meeting, we're one-on-one. You know, we're one-on-one, Gary, and it's my spouse is not invited. My parents aren't invited. Their best friend's not invited. Their siblings are not invited. It's just us, one-on-one. And let me tell you, if you want to get the magnifying glass onto a relationship, one-on-one time is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
So again, if people hear nothing else, Gary, today, start to spend one-on-one time with your loved ones and see how much stronger the family grows as a whole. It's pretty incredible. And I've gotten the feedback now for almost a decade from people. Yeah. And the second thing is without electronics. Now, there's this big battle out there. We all know, oh, my kids are on their phone all the time. I'm not going to encourage you to say, look, move to Montana onto a survival ranch, no electricity, no electronics. Mm-hmm. But I do believe we need to disconnect to reconnect sometimes. Mm-hmm. So what I tell people is this is just an example of intermittent fasting. I call it intermittent tech fasting. If people out there have heard of that health technique. You only eat between certain hours so that your body can burn off the fat better, organs regenerate. That's what Without Electronics does here. When I go on my board meetings with my children, no phones are allowed. I can put my phone on airplane mode to maybe take one picture to commemorate the moment. That's been pretty cool because I've yearbooked these now for several years. But I don't want to get that text. I don't want to get that email. I don't want to get that phone call. And that goes for my son or daughter, whether they're 7 or 16. Mm-hmm. We can go 4 hours without our phones on to give our focus to our relationship. And the reports back, Gary, just on this simple thing of saying, I had no idea how unavailable I was until I turned my phone off and was there with them one-on-one. These things go like peanut butter and jelly. You're one-on-one and you're now turned your phone off. It creates a whole different deepening of your connection, because there's been so many times we've all been like I can tell you 2 weeks ago, it was a couple weeks ago now, I had just gotten home from work. And my daughter and I were doing kind of an evening board meeting, and we were about to start. I said, let me have a few more minutes. And thankfully we hadn't started, but I had my phone on and I'm helping her on the trampoline, and the phone buzzes right in my pocket. I pull it out. Gary, somebody really dropped the ball on a real estate deal. I mean, this thing was lock, stock, and barrel done. So the lender didn't get the stuff in, and now we had to get all new. You know the story. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, you gotta be kidding me. This is all right. I'll deal with it later. But where do you think my head was for the next 20 minutes? Yep. It wasn't with my daughter on the trampoline. It was in that deal. And we think we can be two places at once. And all we need is that little trigger. Yep. But these periods of unavailability, Gary, are so key. Try it with your spouse. For on date night, my phone's not allowed. If you have these short periods of intermittent tech fasting and you're totally unavailable, that's when true connection can happen. That's when your kids can start to open up to you about subjects that you think they'll only go to their friends or the internet for. Turning off the phones is so pinnacle. So that's the second one. And the third one is just a fun activity of their choice with focused reflection. So fun activity of their choice. Like guys like you and I, Gary, we think once in a while we know it all. And we mean that in a good way. Like, I bet you this is what they want to do. I bet you this is what our kids have wanted to do. And so, like, for example, if I really like football and I take them to a preseason Jaguars game, but they don't have any interest in football, at the end of the day, I'm like, great, we bonded. No, that'll like kill the magnifying glass effect. You let them get ownership by planning the day. And I started this with my daughter at the age of 2.5, saying, you plan the day. And this could be anything from princess parties to whatever she wants to do. But by her planning the day, you get to see what are they passionate about, what do they really enjoy, what are their interests, and they get ownership. People go, my teens will never spend a half day with me one-on-one. I say, really? Have you ever said, hey, you plan the day, my phone's going off, let's just do something fun? So, and fun activity with focused reflection, by the way, is just a short definition for experiential education. That's all it is. And experiential education, I'm kind of an education geek, has been proven to be the most proven form of education on the planet. It just takes a little more effort to put it into practice. So all you're doing is you're letting them plan the day. You usually do a fun activity, grab a meal together, and at the end, it's called focus reflection. You spend some time to talk. And the simple starting question of all experiential education is, hey, what was your favorite part of the day and why? And just be quiet and listen. And this might not be a long conversation at first, and I can give some tips on this, but it's just a moment to open up. And normally, if you've planned the day, your phone's been off, you've been one-on-one, you've had fun together, you've been together a few hours, you've gone through something I call decompression.
Yeah.
This is where you're relaxed, you don't have distraction, and real communication starts to open up, which is, at the end of the day, all that we want from our kids. None of us want our kids to retire us, where we're like, gosh, they don't want to talk to me about things going on in their life. They don't want to come to me for advice. They don't want to, ask about things that I've personally been through. We don't want to be put out to pasture. We want to have our kids come to us, and we want to be able to be there for them. This is absolutely one of the best ways. Again, looking back at notes and emails and letters, the breakthroughs that have happened on these simple quote-unquote board meetings, where they were getting together with their kids once a quarter for at least 4 hours, one-on-one without their phones, doing a fun activity of their choice with some time to talk at the end. I'm telling you, Gary, this opens up the lines of communication.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting hearing you talking about this. I know as my older children got older, there was less frequent communication. And same thing happened between my parents. I mean, we're great now. It's like they kind of fly from the nest, and then they start coming back around again, as a full-fledged adults. But in that time frame, and I don't, if you mentioned pre-18 or post-18, I'm seeing myself using some of these techniques now with my older children, just to keep the communication lines open. Because you're right, it's not, sometimes if it's been a week or two, it's like that you're not constantly connected like you were when they were younger. And sometimes we reconnect and sometimes we really don't. And I really want to, sometimes I miss my older daughter, for example, because she's busy now. She's married and she's a special ed teacher. And I'm thinking, I really want to connect with her. And I find myself using that word over and over again. And so everything you just said there, I'm thinking I'm doing pretty good. And now I'm realizing I can do better, so these techniques I could see myself using. And I appreciate you sharing. I do have another question for you, if you don't mind,
Sure.
Yeah, it sounds like you've probably done some pretty good studying on your own, like reading, maybe you've had classes, but everything you're describing is it's really like you're really good at this. And have you had any formal training or any particular books you read or courses you've taken, like at the community college level, anything like that, to help you even come up with the concepts and the ideas, and then you create your own methodology, like the board meeting and coupons and stuff like that? But does this all just homegrown, Jim, or it's fascinating is what it is. I'm just curious about if you had any other input yourself or insight to help you come up with these things,
I did take some different classes years ago. Once I got out of college, I became a really good student. There were certain things, and I found that besides financial intelligence, which obviously you're teaching a lot of on this with real estate investing, I just felt that personal development and relationship skills were two of the most undertaught things in formal education, but they're two of the most rewarding things personally and professionally that we can do. So I started to take a lot of alternative classes, anything from Dale Carnegie to Stephen Covey to Robert Kiyosaki, and any of those, helped with financial intelligence or relationship skills and personal development. So I started to get more of a basis where I think it's things that we were taught, but I give those subjects priority. And by giving them priority, that's when about 8 years ago now, we started just by prototype, just to host retreats for families. It was just a couple of entrepreneur families getting together, and we'd spend 2-3 days together. So it'd be like a mastermind. We'd talk about different issues, things that, how do we strengthen a family, what weakens a family, how do we support each other? And in these are what I found, Gary, these were my bunch of families together and just talking and opening up the lines of communications. And in these 2-3 day sessions, I learned so much about relationship skills. Again, I was supposed to be the one teaching. I think I learned more from the people that I was hosting just by listening, because you'd see patterns of behaviors. You'd see patterns of weaknesses for all families. You'd have things that inspire families that are the same and things that everyone wished they were doing more of or less of. So I started to see these patterns of behaviors and desires for family life. So those retreats that we hosted for 5-6 years, those were our grounds for learning. That's where I really started to hone in on some of these simple but key principles.
Good. I appreciate that. That helps. Like, as I know, sometimes I feel like I've got the $1 million idea, and then the same time, by the way, you and I are so much alike. I obviously went to college and got a degree, but I never really started being a learner till I was like 32 years old. I read my first book that I wanted to read myself because I wanted to read it, not because the teacher said I had to read it. And it really, it was a Tony Robbins book, Awaken the Giant Within. And I found it in one of my units. Somebody left it. I thought, hey, what's this thing? Awaken the Giant Within. And really set me on fire. And I just went on basically a path, just solid learning. I now have over 3,000 books in my library, and I've taken multiple programs over the years and studied under a lot of great people, joining mastermind groups. And I'm a constant learner because I learned, it's like whenever you learn one thing, all of a sudden you realize, well, there's another 10 other things I can learn,
Yeah, I think that we have very similar paths. And I think a lot of us end up on the same path, just coming from different things, saying, hey, wait, why wasn't this kind of information and power within taught to me, 20 years ago at the age of 10 or 11? Because I think kids are ready for it about the age of 11 and 12. The subjects because I've read that book, would start to make sense. They really start to grasp them. And when people go, well, what's again, I don't like the word hack, but what's one of the best things you can do for your family? I say, get them lessons at a young age in personal development, relationship skills, and financial intelligence. Just do that, because everything else around it, those 3 subjects, no matter what they decide to do, will probably support them. Even if they want to be the doctor, the engineer, or some of your listeners, chiropractor, whatever. If you're a good, solid chiropractor, but you're uncomfortable in your own skin, your relationships are in the toilet, and you're bad with handling money, you're probably not going to be able to be the best chiropractor you can, and you're certainly not going to have an enjoyable personal life.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, hey, just it's an interesting question here. You're absolutely right. The more you learn, and what's interesting, when you learn in one area of life, it often has a positive impact on other areas of your life. Like I call them environments, And so if you improve in your financial environment, it's probably have a direct related effect on your physical health, maybe your mental health, maybe your environment where you live, that kind of thing. But if you notice the things that you learn personally, like what you're doing with your spouse and your children, have you looked back and thought, my gosh, I actually applied that to my business life. I had this real estate deal that went sideways, or I got it because I applied some of the principles. Any example there you can think of? Because I think it's fascinating that you've done this, and you can apply what you learned to your personal and your investing or your business life.
Yeah, so that absolutely. So actually, the word rhythms was a word that I think was used by Vern Harnish in the Rockefeller principles. They said that he had certain rhythms in his business. These were very deliberate rituals within his business that really helped accelerate it. And again, this mentor of mine said to me, rhythmize your home life around some of your most important relationships. Mm-hmm. So again, I don't like to have to think, Gary. So like every Wednesday morning at 9:30, I meet with my CFO. And that's our time. We go over the cash dashboard, what's coming in, what's going on, what's all this. That's every Wednesday. I don't need to think about it. Okay. Every Thursday, 5:30 to 8:30 is date night with a question with my wife. We go on a date and we have at least one. We do these question cards where we ask each other one powerful question, not how's the weather or, what's your favorite color, but some deeper question of, what was something that you dreamed about as a kid and then you kind of gave up on. So there's lots of examples, but I always try to rhythmize, and same thing with my business. So there's a rhythm right there for my personal life and my professional life. So rhythmizing is important. But I think a key word for people out there too, Gary, is distinction. Okay. So what I've learned is, because there's always that pendulum swing. We swing the pendulum one way and say, wow, if it's applying here, I can apply it here and it's going to work. So what I found is I started to apply tons of business principles to home, and some of them don't work. And let me give you an example. So this is where you want to be looking and be aware of certain principles that you could use in your business and your home life, but some of them might not translate and you don't want to translate. And I'll give an example. the art of delegation has been one of the most key things to building my real estate investment company and my family education company. However, delegation, the art of delegation, has been one of the most abused things unknown by an entrepreneur at home. You don't want to I've watched entrepreneurs where they get into such this delegation mode, which is great for business. Mm-hmm. They turn around and did the same thing at home, and they actually completely delegated themselves out of family life. They delegated it to a nanny, to a spouse, to a grandparent, to an older sibling. They've delegated themselves out of family life. So the art of delegation, although important for certain things, especially in business, you don't want to delegate yourself out of family life, if that makes sense. You want to be a part of it. And if you do, then all these people are coming to me, and the two dominating emotions are saying, I feel guilty and depressed all the time. And they would start to share with me and say, well, let me hear your schedule. What are your rhythms at home? And man, they had just completely delegated themselves out of family life. They weren't even necessary. It was delegated to everyone but themselves to be involved. And that's something we want to avoid. So what I've learned is a lot of principles, solid ones in business, can be applied at home or even almost vice versa. But you always want to be aware and make distinctions of ones that don't work. The art of delegation is a perfect one for people to remember. Delegate in business, but don't delegate yourself out of family life. I mean, that's the reward. That's the reaping of the reward to be able, as you were saying, you now trade money for experiences and all that. Imagine if you were just continuing to trade and not be available. So you're not wanting to delegate. You're saying, hey, I'm going to spend the money not to delegate and to be here for this part of it on a Wednesday afternoon when you were the only dad there. That's called, you didn't delegate, nor should you have. You didn't want to delegate. So I might be kind of dragging this point out, but it's a really powerful one that I like to share.
Yeah, I love that. What's interesting is, a lot of people tend to compartmentalize their lives, and like I remember early on in the corporate world, my boss would say, you know what, when you're here, you're here. You don't think about home. When you're at home, you don't think about here. That wasn't the case. When I was at work, I was thinking about home. When I was at home, I was thinking about work. So what I realized is I'm one person, one whole complete person in all of my life with my children, my life at work, my life with my wife, and my life, me physically, my exercising my body and sharpening my mind are all interrelated. And so it just didn't make sense. And I realized, okay, everything you're just describing there makes so much sense, and it kind of resonates with me. It validates everything I've really seen in spite of what I heard. So I think this really is a great way to wrap this up. We're actually getting close on time too, but I think everybody who's listening, hopefully you really pay attention to that last segment there, because man, that's the kind of stuff that's going to allow you to feel the fulfillment of what you are doing, whether it's buying a big building or launching another office for your chiropractic business, or planning an impromptu vacation with your family. Totally surprise them. Have a meeting about it and say, we got something serious to talk about. We weren't planning on this, but we're going to go on vacation in 2 weeks. To Jekyll Island, for example. I want that. Really bring a smile to your face, guys, and warm your heart, because I can tell you, it goes the further you go along in life's journey, the faster it goes. So, yeah. Hey, Jim, I just want to thank you, man, for being part of this and sharing your valuable time and your insights and your expertise. And we'll maybe have you back again another time, and maybe we'll talk about real estate. But I really wanted to do this for the group, and I think I speak for everyone when I say thank you for doing this. And I can't wait to see you again at one of our mastermind events. It might be the winter retreat. I'm not sure for me, but God bless you and your family. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Before we go, is there anything you can share with the listeners, like where can they find the book, the program, website? You have your own podcast, anything like that you can share so that these folks can connect with you and perhaps improve their lives too,
Sure. If they want to read the book, The Family Board Meeting, they just go right to Amazon. It's got a lot of write-ups there and positive reviews. It's done very well, and it's a very easy read, I like to say, because I know people are busy, so it's a short, easy read. So you can find that at Amazon or go to www.18summers.com. You can learn about more of what we do to help families, and you can get a free PDF report of different things we share, kind of that we went over today to get you things put into practice right away.
Awesome. We'll make sure that goes in the show notes too. So, but once again, I think I speak for everyone. I say thank you for doing this. It's been a great session. One of my favorite ones actually so far. And again, perhaps we'll have you back again. And next time, maybe we'll talk about real estate the next time.
Sounds good. Happy to do it.
Okay. Well, listen, everyone. Take care of yourselves. God bless you. We'll see you on the next podcast. And take care. We'll talk then. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Real Estate Investing for Professional Men and Women. Be sure to go to myinvestmentservices.com to join our community and start building wealth today.